Welcome aboard the podcast A Woman's Spark with myself, Janik. Today is our second episode, but with our very first guest. This podcast is to help women heal and become the best version of themselves during the roller coaster that is called life. The podcast A Woman's Spark with myself was created to give women around the world a voice and a place to truly be themselves, to finally feel seen and understood, to build a community of women and to inspire them to become stronger and brighter as they were born to be. It's me, Janik, your host. On today's podcast, we're going to talk about the hurdles women go through when they have a medical problem. How are we perceived? What path and hurdles do we have to jump through to finally be seen and heard? In order to find a solution to our problem, funnily as it might sound, it is a hurdle to find a solution. Just a side note, in the short episode after this one, you're going to find similar situation in the field to provide you with more tools if you're living a similar situation. All of this to help you get back your spark in your medical situation. Our guest today has had her fair share of problems with the medical system, just like myself. She's had years of ups and downs to figure out what the problem was. Has she found a solution? What happened to her? We're about to find out. She's here to tell her story. Please help me welcome our first sparkling woman, Geneviève Bourdeau. Hi, Geneviève.
Hello. How are you?
Good. Welcome on the podcast, A Woman's Spark.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So, like I was saying just earlier, is we go through a medical system, and as women, everyone has a different situation, but sometimes it could take a long time to find what we have. So what's your story? What did you have to go through?
Well, it's been going on for a couple of years. There's been two bouts of issues, medically speaking. One of them happened in the late 90s. I don't know if it's because I'm a woman or if it was because I was younger, but for 6 years I was told that my gastric problems were related to anxiety only. Took 6 years for them to realize that my issues were related to my gallbladder and I had to have it removed. So for 6 years it was anxiety, stress, they did the test, they did all the appointments and the specialists I could see, but still it was always supposedly related to anxiety. Fast forward to 2022, Christmas Day, my tongue swelled up on Christmas Day. Angioedema, didn't know what it was related. The only thing I knew was the fact that I had COVID. So that happened on Christmas Day 2022, again in November 23, and then on March of last year. The thing with March of last year, I was abroad, I was in New Zealand, was testing negative for COVID, but started my hands, my tongue, they were getting swelled up, and didn't know what I had because it was testing negative. So you can imagine being stuck, abroad, flight canceled, panic attacks.
Sounds dreadful.
It was dreadful. And then you get on the plane, and it's a 13-hour flight to Vancouver. 95% of that is above water. And then I had new symptoms. Like my lips started swelling up. So you don't understand what's going on. You don't want to use the EpiPen because you cannot get to a hospital. So 13 hours wondering whether or not I would make it to Vancouver alive. And so that happened again. All the angioedemas happened again in April and October, but it's in November November 24, that I went to the hospital. And they gave me a pill for my migraines. And I didn't have my diagnostic then, but unfortunately, the pill they gave me got me into shock.
If I can just ask,
Yep.
Can you pronounce what they say you have?
The diagnosis came 3 weeks afterwards. It's chronic spontaneous urticaria, and I don't necessarily have the urticaria. I don't have the IVES, but it includes angioedemas. So
Which includes that, like, you swell up, and which part of your body swells up?
It all depends. Usually if I get sick, because mine are triggered by viruses. Okay. So the 5th day after I get a virus, it's my tongue, my hands, and my lips, usually.
Okay, so tongues, hands, lips. Have you had any other areas that have swelled up before?
When I went into shock, it was my eye. So it started with the eye swelling up, and then gastric issues, and then some type of feeling in the back of my teeth, my teeth.
You too.
Yep. So it started swelling up, and that's when I had to go call the ambulance, 911, EpiPens, and all of this. And that was not even 5 hours after they gave me non-steroid anti-inflammatory. But back then, I didn't know what the diagnostic was, and even though I was telling the guy at the ER that I was taking that pill, like cortisone, to him it didn't ring in the bell. He gave me that pill, and it's known that if you take and said like non-steroid anti-inflammatory, when you have that diagnostic, it's going to create a shock. You're going to go into shock.
Okay.
So,
Which can cause what as a secondary symptom or effect?
well, when you go into shock, it's the same thing as if you're deadly allergic to peanuts and you eat peanuts.
So your
yeah.
airways block up.
In my case, they didn't block up.
Okay.
In my case, it was the eye, it was the gastric issues, because without going into too much details, when you go into shock, they consider that you have an anaphylactic shock when 2 out of the 4 systems are impacted. And the 4 systems are cardio, skin, angioedema, so the swelling up, and your airways. So mine was gastric, skin, and some swelling up.
Okay. And so now you're on the way back from New Zealand. You're swelling up. You can't use the EpiPen. You're up in the air. You land. What happens next? What happens after that?
Well, I was panicking. I didn't know what was going on, so I ended up going to, because when I landed in Vancouver. It was a layover. Ended up in the hospital in Vancouver, and back then I didn't know what I had. To me, it was like an allergic reaction to viruses, but you cannot be allergic to viruses. So I was trying to tell the paramedics that I might be allergic to COVID, and they're like, it's impossible. Well, I'm getting allergic reaction, so call it what you want. Ended up in the hospital, and then, you're stuck in the hospital in Vancouver. And when I packed in the morning, because let's not forget that morning before I got on my flight, I was tested by paramedic in New Zealand. They told me I was COVID positive. I didn't have anything with me. I only have my carry-on. So I don't have any socks. I don't have a coat. The only thing I have in my carry-on is like underwear and like shampoo or something. It's so I get to Vancouver, it's 3 Celsius. I don't have any socks. I have COVID. I don't have a coat. I'm in the hospital, and the guy's like, I'm going to give you cortisone. You have to wait whatever amount of hours, I don't remember. And then you have to come see me before 2 so that I can see you again and sign your release so that you can get back on a plane to go back to Montreal. So I'm by myself in Vancouver, not dressed for Vancouver weather, kind of freaking out because I've been awake for like hours.
Stressing already on a 13-hour flight.
And so I got back. I ended up sitting in the hallway in the hospital for that amount of hours because I was COVID positive. Back then you can go in a restaurant or anything if you're positive.
No. They were blocking you from everything back then.
So I sat in the hallway for like 4 or 5 hours. Ended up going back to the emergency. Asked for the doctor. They couldn't find the doctor. And I'm like, no, you're going to find him because I'm not going through this again. Ended up finding him. He signed my release. Called Air Canada back. And they're like, oh, well, now that you have your release paper, our medic will have to review it. And then you're going to be able to check in for a flight. And I'm like, can I just get a shower? I haven't showered in like 36 hours.
So fast forward, you land in Montreal, and then you still don't really know what you have, right? So
No.
you're having a battle to find a real diagnostic because it keeps coming up
Yeah.
in random situations.
Yeah.
But
So
it comes up mostly in what kind of situations?
Me being sick. So that was March of 24, and then late April 24, I get sick again, but it's a cold. And till then, between December 22 and April 24, it was only triggered by COVID. So when I started being sick, and I ended up again having the thumb swell up. Ended up in the ER again, and then they had to bring me to the shot, like to the, I don't know what to call it, but the room, because my lips and my tongue were swelled up, and my nose was congested. I couldn't breathe.
Okay. Wow.
But what's really funny, now I find it funny, but I didn't find it funny. No. They were like, okay, let's go. You're going in the room. And they had me undress because they had to put electrodes on me and those kind of things. But I'm like, no, I don't want to. I don't know you. And the doctor was like, we've seen other people, you might be, like, it's a problem right now if you can't breathe, we have to get you taken care of.
We have to do something about this. This is dangerous, so let's go.
Your bra is not the problem. So anyway, that was funny. And then for like between April and October, I wasn't sick. It was summer. But like it happened that my lips swelled up, and I remember early October I was in New York, but I had some meds to take. Like I had seen an allergist in May that told me if ever it starts swelling up again, this is what you have to take, and this is what you have to take. And if ever it gets worse, then you go to the ER. But this should keep you from going to the ER. But in New York, it started swelling up again. And at the end of October, I was sick, and it started again, like big time. And so I called the allergist back, and I said, well, it's not working, and what's going on? And so she said, well, you might have, an immune system problem. So go for blood test. And so I did a networking event with a mask on, and then I had to take it off, and I was kind of wondering whether or not I had caught something because I started feeling not good, and that's what triggered the urticaria and then the panic attack, because I'm like, my God, I don't understand what's going on, because I didn't have the diagnostic early November. Started freaking out, panic attack, ended up in the hospital again, and that's when they gave me the pill that basically like lit the house on fire. And that's the latest bout, and that's the worst.
So what's the latest house on fire that you're naming?
Well, I mean, I went to the ER 3 times in 10 days. Okay. The pill that they gave me triggered, as I said, the shock. Mm-hmm. So edema on my eye, gastric issues, like heavy gastric issues for half an hour, the swelling up behind my teeth. I went to, 2 EpiPens, ended up in the hospital. They kept me for an hour just to make sure that my heart was fine. Went back home. And so that's two trips to the ER within 8 hours. Let's keep that in mind. And then a week afterwards, I started having urticaria in my hands. And the angioedema started. But to me, angioedemas on my hand triggered the trauma from March. Ooh, so I'm like, okay, it started
your
again.
Body remembered
so I'm
what
like,
happened before, so it reignited that part as well as a new one.
So I'm like, why am I having urticaria? Why are my hands, like swelling up? What's going on? Is it, I'm not sick. Why is it? So I went back. But the thing is, like we have to keep in mind that ER doctors are not, their goal is to get you back on your feet so you're out of the hospital.
Yes.
An allergist, her goal is to make sure that I'm good long term. So they gave me cortisone to make sure that the angioedemas would go down quickly. But the thing is, cortisone is like oil on a fire for urticaria. So yeah, I took it for 12 days. The angioedemas went down, the urticaria went up.
Oh boy.
And that's probably those
one problem and create a new one.
And even though I kept on saying, are you sure my allergist doesn't want me to take that? It's like, yeah, we've checked and you have to take that. And I'm like, okay. So I took it because obviously it's a doctor. Who am I to argue with a doctor, right? I know better now. But that being said,
live and learn.
But I mean, again, it was not an ill intention. They did whatever they thought was fine. And again, let's keep in mind that I didn't have a diagnosis by then. So I can't really blame them. It's just that it put like oil on the fire. The whole thing blew up, and that triggered anxiety even more.
So, how long from day one, first reaction ever, to today did it take to get, first of all, a diagnostic, and 2, a solution to the problem?
Well, not that I don't want to be a pessimist, but I don't have a solution. I have a solution, but it's not a, working 100% solution. It took 23 months to get an official diagnosis.
And how many doctors have you seen in between?
More than 15.
More than 15.
I saw it started happening in December of 2022. I saw the allergist, I think, for the first time in May of 24. So that's 18 months. And then the potential diagnosis was angioedemas, but triggered by what? It wasn't clear. Nothing was chronic. It was just, it seems to be triggered by viruses. But it's just like, try not to get sick, right? Okay. And then because it kept on going, because it appeared more often than not, and as of November, because of the fact that like this whole house on fire thing, I think, but I don't have a confirmation, but I think it kind of made the condition to become chronic. All the meds, all the stress, all the anxiety surrounding this it probably had an impact on my immune system. And
help. Sure, exactly. Where are you today in the research? Because I know you're taking some medication, trauma medication. So can you tell us a little bit more about where you're at today and what you're doing right now?
I hate medication. It's not that I don't believe in medication. It's just that I don't like to put that in my system and depend on something. And the thing is, also, is that those kind of meds are not like children's Tylenol. It's long story short, I think it's my fourth med that I've tried since November of 2024. And the one I'm taking right now, it's a pill that they usually give to people who suffer from lupus, and long-term use can affect my sight.
And lupus is a autoimmune disease, right?
Yep.
So
yep.
Okay, so they're aligning themselves as an autoimmune disease, which is an obvious fact. It is an autoimmune
yep.
disease. So, and you could lose sight with that medication. So, do they check you out? How often do you have to go to the doctor? Are you allowed to go out, or what's your...
Well, right now, the thing is, initially when I started I started this med in mid-December, and back then when I started it, I was on that pill and 4 antihistamine per day. Wow. Now I'm down to 1 antihistamine per day plus that pill. So as to your question, December they checked my sight, so I had an eye exam. Because the thing that I didn't go into is that I also have ophthalmic migraines. So basically, when my hormones fluctuate, I'm going to have issues with my eyesight as it is. So I see spots, I see colors. And 2 years ago, I lost my sight in my left eye. And
that's how long? Wow.
15 minutes.
Okay. Wow.
So that happened in January of 2023. So in November, when I ended up in the hospital in the ER because I was freaking out, I had the urticaria, I had the stress of what's going on, and I had issues with my eyesight. So when you tell me that I'm going to have to take a medication that could impact my eyesight when I already have issues with it, I'm not that thrilled,
Obviously.
So
it's not reassuring, You're trying to treat one problem, but it can cause another really bad one.
And that's the thing. So the pill I'm taking is not, and it doesn't suppress the immune system. It slows it down.
Okay.
So, so it slows it down so that my immune system is not fighting, because urticaria, it could be allergic based or it could be immune, autoimmune based. Mine seems to be autoimmune. They don't understand, what causes it. Usually urticaria is a consequence of something else. You have like an autoimmune system problem, and then you're going to get hives. Mine, they don't see any other issues, so they don't understand why I have it now.
Okay.
So eyesight is checked yearly, and I'm going to have to get blood tests probably every 6 months because of the fact that it could have an impact on my liver as well.
And how long are you on this drug for now? Because it's a test, right? So how long do you still have on it?
There's no set time. I'm trying to get rid of it as soon as I can. So, I've been decreasing the amount of antihistamine myself. Like every 2 weeks, I'm trying to go lower and lower. And I try to do somatic exercises so that, because basically one of my hypotheses, and it hasn't been confirmed, but because of what happened in November, I think my nervous system got dysregulated. So I'm trying to regulate my nervous system so that it doesn't feel in a fight or flight situation. It feels more secure. And I think it's helped because, as I said, I've managed to lower my antihistamine from 4 to 1 per day.
Okay.
So
well,
I'm
better,
really,
but it's not perfect yet, right?
Exactly. So I'm trying to get rid of the other pill, probably for summer, because there's a week and a half to go on this one antihistamine, and I'm seeing my doctor end of next week, and I'm going to talk to her about, trying to get rid of the other pill. But again, if my situation is indeed chronic, I'm going to have to find a way to manage it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not much you can do. As long as the medical system doesn't find you a real solution that's going to cure everything, you're kind of stuck in the loop of trying to go with the medical system, but also go with your gut feeling and try some other things, right? To keep you and keep your sanity, but also keep your health going, right? So out of all of this, obviously it affected you, but are there other people that it affected around you, your situation?
Well, for sure, in the sense that my husband works abroad, like usually 9 months out of the year. And I usually go meet him wherever he is on a monthly basis. He's been home since November.
Okay.
Because I've been meeting a lot of doctors, a lot of specialists. I have a lot of appointments. Obviously, since my eyesight right now, because of the migraines, is affected. I can't drive at night and those kind of things. So his life has changed. Like for him, November, December, and January haven't been fun months at all. Obviously, it impacts my family as well and my friends as well, because I haven't done anything social since November, really.
Because you can't get out because
I
of
can't
your
go out.
system, and
I cannot take the chance of catching something.
Of course, no, definitely.
So yeah.
I have one last question for you towards that, because it's a Women's Spark podcast. Just informative way, as a woman in the medical system, did you feel you were treated differently? How did you say that your situation might have been different because you're a woman versus if, let's say, your husband went to the hospital?
This bout, I'd say that the only time that I felt as though I was gaslit almost was by a woman.
Okay.
The third time I went within the 10 days in early November, I was freaking out. Like, panic was there, anxiety was there, my hands were swelling up, and the nurse was like disregarding my anxiety and my panic and disregarding the experience that I had a week prior. And she put me as a P4, and I understand that my life wasn't in danger or anything, but I felt, I'm not saying she had the intention, but I felt as though to her I was making a bigger deal out of this. But when you go to the ER 3 times in 10 days and you get out of the ER to go back 4 hours afterwards because they gave you a pill that created some issues, you don't know to trust anymore. And so basically I felt that maybe she was sick or fed up, or maybe I just misunderstood the way that she was treating me. But that's the only time with all of this situation since December 2022 that I felt as though I was gaslit or disregarded. But it wasn't because necessarily I was a woman. It was by a woman, I felt.
Okay. Thank you very much for all these details. We're going to take a little break and come back, and we're going to talk about the medal, right? There's an analogy of the medal. There's two sides to a medal. There's always a positive and a negative. Everything that happens to us is usually for a reason. We don't automatically see it. We often see the negative first and then move on to seeing the positive. So we're going to come back and talk about that when we'll be right back. Thank you very much, Geneviève. Welcome back to the podcast, A Woman Spark, with myself, Janik. We're back here with Geneviève Bourdeau, and we're talking about traveling the medical system as a woman, and what it's like to find a solution for ourselves whenever we have chronic pain and can't find really the right answer to our question. So now we're back. We learned that Geneviève has had over 18 months, if not, I would even say more than 2 years worth of back and forth with the medical system to see what's what, try, test, figure out, even medication that could send her blind. But she's got an immune suppressed system right now, which doesn't allow her to get out as much. So we're going to talk about what has this experience, an event, caused in terms of more like the negative effects. Because it's important as women, and we tend to be a bit more emotional, and we tend to need to let it out, right? We need to have to talk about things, the pain, to just kind of let it go, to move on. So how do you deal with the negative, Geneviève? And what's the negative? What are all the emotions that come to you when you think of those 2 years?
A lot of anger, a lot of insecurity, a lot of anxiety, because of the unknown. You don't know what tomorrow's going to. Life itself makes it that you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. But when you open that can of worms of chronic illness and immune related illnesses, it's something that I never really considered before. Like, I have eczema, but I mean, you deal with it, and it's not the end of the world. I just don't drink apple juice, it's not the end of the world. But I wasn't aware of all the possibilities, medically speaking, of diseases and issues and illnesses, and when you start looking at it, you're like, oh my freaking Lord. I'm not a risk taker in life. My husband is. I'm not. We balance each other out. So basically, when that can of worm opened, I was like, oh my God, there's a risk for me to develop another, another illness, another this and another that. And so all of the insecurity that was created was unbelievable. And you can't really prepare. Like, I'm someone who reads, who understands, or prepares and makes sure that I'm on top of it. When you're in the situation that I was in, and there's a lot of unknown, and it's not like, go back to December 22, doctors didn't know much about COVID.
No, it was still fairly brand new, and they were talking about it being around for over 5 years, and we don't know where we're going to go and what it is, stay home.
And the first thing they said, and I don't blame the doctor that I met then, but she's like, you're probably allergic to Otrivin. And I'm like, hey, I'm close to 50 years old. It's like, I've taken Otrivin before and I've never had an issue. So, when you're dealing with something that's so brand new, and again, ER doctors don't have the same purpose as a specialist. They have to make sure that you can get out as soon as you can. So they don't handle things the same way, and what they have to do is not the same thing. So that creates a lot of uncertainty and a lot of, in my case, anxiety. And then you fast forward to November and December, and anger was there, and at some point it was just defeat, in the sense that I've lived a really good life. I've been privileged for 1,000 reasons. Like, my parents always put myself and my brother, above anything else and in front of their own needs. And, I have a pretty good career, and I've been with my husband for 25 years, and I've been, and I have a lot of friends who really back me up and those kind of things. So when you get to a point that you're like, okay, you can go out, you can go outside of your house to see people, you can go out at a restaurant because you could catch a virus and get sick, and we don't want you to be triggered because you're going to have to take pills that we don't want you to take anymore. And keep in mind that I was out in restaurants probably for 5 to 6 meals a week. I was eating out.
It's a huge change in your lifestyle. Huge.
So, and I've been self-employed for 15 months. So not only is my lifestyle changing, I cannot go to networking events and meet people face to face anymore.
And your friends.
And
the basis is, yes, you're with your husband, and it's great to have that support system, but just to be able to connect with people and see people and to touch a person, hug a person, and feel like you're understood and seen by all those friends you say you have.
And and I'm a fan of Christmas. So let's keep in mind that November, late November was a month before Christmas, so I didn't have a Christmas this year. So that changed my lifestyle. That when we're talking about the fact that I'm risk adverse, you're telling me, like, am I going to be able to earn my living? Like, will I be able to see my computer and my screen, and can I keep on working? And am I going to be able to sleep and be rested enough to focus on work? So my life, at some point, I was like, what's the point? I'd rather not be here than have to live a limited life at some point. I didn't attempt to kill myself or anything like that, but in terms of emotions, you really start to want
mental health must have been affected immediately.
For sure.
And how did you cope with trying to uplift your mental health? Because it's the first thing that goes, and it's just like, it can be a very quicksand kind of situation in the head where it downward spirals, and then you don't know how to get out of there. So how did you get out of it? Or try to on a daily basis, right?
Yeah. I'm lucky that I'm resourceful. So first and foremost, November, December, a lot of weeks and time was spent on trying to find a psychologist, a therapist that was specialized in chronic illnesses. Before I actually found my therapist, there was a lot of frustration that came with it, because it's not as though therapists these days, or specialists like my allergist, they're not waiting for my phone call.
No. No, they have a long list of people to attend.
So that was one of the frustrations, and the feeling of powerlessness. I need help. Nobody is available for it. So that kind of was very triggering until I managed to see my allergist and managed to see and get a new therapist. So, and she kept on telling me, Geneviève, it's temporary. And I was like, it's a chronic illness. By definition, it can be temporary. And I was not happy. I was really not happy. I'm like, stop feeding me lies. And it was not good.
No, and because then, we wanna to be able to have a date, or we want to know when it's going to stop, because we're happy to go through it. Yeah, we're happy to go through this, but give me a deadline. I need to know when I'm going to get out of here.
You need to feel in control again. You need to be able to say, I don't mind being in the tunnel, but I want to see the light at the end of it. Give me something so that I see the light. But what I found out through this whole ordeal, and I know we'll get to that later on, but there is light while you're in the tunnel. And my light, because when you're asking, like, how did I manage to get out of it a bit, is I managed to find a therapist, a good one, who was available and specialized. I had my husband who was adamant on, let's try to find the positive. And my husband is not that type of person, but he was like, there are positive things, and let's focus on this. And we've never played cards as much as we have in the last 3 months.
You must be amazing at cards now.
Oh, he frustrates me because he wins every time. He doesn't want to play
no!
I want to play Monopoly. He doesn't want to, so we play cards and he beats me. But it's good time spent with my husband, quality time. The other thing is, and it might be overlapping with your other segment, but getting out of this, like your brain is made to focus on the negative.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to get into that, and I don't have the percentage, but it has a tendency to focus on the negative. So
100%.
I try, and I've been doing this for years. I try to focus at least 5 to 10 minutes a day. I try to spend on focusing on one good thing that happened during the day. So that kept my head above water, and that's why I said I've never attempted anything in the last months, because my head was kind of above water because of my husband, because of everybody who was trying to adapt like the food they were serving, because I was attempting to cut like gluten, dairy, sugar, try to find a way to stop, because since November, what drives me nuts is not the angioedemas per se, it's the burning. My skin feels as though it's burning, as though I've had a sunburn and I scratch my skin on bricks, if you can imagine.
Oh, doesn't that get just, it's like.
That's what drove me nuts.
Yeah. You said the word, driving you nuts.
Yeah. That's what basically got me to the line that said,
I need to find a solution.
And that's what I said. I'm not going to live a life where my skin is burning 24/7, that I can't eat anything and I can go out of my house. It's not something that I want to live through.
If it burns, you're probably scratching it or trying to rub it, and it aggravates it and makes it even worse. So on top of your mental health, you got the body that's aching and hurting, and you're swelling. And I'm really sorry you went through that. I'm really sorry you went through that.
The mental health went down because of this feeling. Because, it started on December 4th. 4th, 5th, 6th, everybody's had a sunburn. And then, you end up like after a week or so, it doesn't feel as bad. On December 23rd, when it's been 3 weeks.
Oh, no.
Ongoing, nonstop. I mean, I blew a fuse, and I'm like, okay, no, I can't live like this. So, to go back to your question, trying to focus on the positive, the people around me who try to adapt the food, and meeting people in networking events. I was doing virtual networking events, meeting people who didn't know me from Adam or Eve, and to see them take time out of their schedule to explain to me how the medical system worked, and when you have a rare condition, what you can do and what you can think about, and advices like that. And that, when I say that I'm privileged, that's part of what I mean by that.
Absolutely. We're privileged. We have a roof over our head. We are wearing clothes. We're in the heat. We have food on the table, and we have a system around us, whether we know them or we don't, that often people just want to help you out.
Yep.
Right. And that is something not to spit on, because it's a lot more, but it doesn't take away from what you lived. But thankfully, like you said, you're lucky. You did have some help, but
yeah,
I'm sorry you went through that.
And that's what brings the hope. And at some point, I was having a conversation with myself, because it happens pretty often, even more so when you're stuck at home for that long. And I said, I don't mind fighting, but give me a reason to fight for. Because, as I said, I've had a very good life. So, I don't want to go and be bitter, for years on end. So I said, give me a reason to fight. And you're part of the reason why I ended up fighting. I met you in a networking event. I met other people, and basically I realized that I can give back, and I can use this as an occasion, an opportunity to give back and talk about resilience and adaptation and adaptability, and a new project came out of this, and not only a new project, but also all of this. And it's pretty crazy. You alluded to it earlier when you said everything happens for a reason. A lot of people don't believe in destiny or those kind of things, and I'm not going to argue with anybody. But as far as I'm concerned, everything happens for a reason, because to me there's a reason and an opportunity in everything that happens to learn and to grow. Nobody's going to tell me that my father dying when I was outside of the city in 2018 was a good thing. It wasn't. However, out of this beep situation came a lot of learning and a lot of growing. So, not only did I meet you, not only did you inspire me for part of my project, not only did I meet other people that allowed me to grow, but all of this since mid-February allowed me to clarify my positioning as a self-employed person and what it is I wanted and what it is I wanted to do and what kind of impact I wanted to have on people. And again, if it wasn't for this medical condition, I wouldn't be as clear on where I'm going as I am now.
We're definitely going to go into that into the next chapter and the final one. But if you don't mind me asking as a last question in the negative blog before we take a little break, is out of your whole life, what lesson about the medical system, the medical practitioners, the professionals in that field, did you learn in the past and had to unlearn through this experience, that you had to change your behavior or change the way you approach the medical system in order to achieve what you want to achieve?
Two things I'd say. To me, doctors have always been on a pedestal. They know better. They know more. They know, and I'm not saying they don't. Obviously, they're trained, they're specialized, they've done a lot of studies, but they're human.
Yeah.
And like anything in life, you go and you tell them something, and I have an allergist who's super competent, but she's super competent in her field. You cannot ask her to be as competent in another field.
Absolutely.
And, like my general doctor, my family doctor, when I went to see him with, I'm sick and tired of being sick, can someone has the overview of my situation? He said, I don't have the skills to do it. You're going to have to see a resident who's specialized in this big picture. And I cannot thank him enough to have been that humble and say, I'm not the guy for you. So what I've learned and what I've had to unlearn is that I have a responsibility in what I bring to myself in trusting my gut feeling. I was alluding to it earlier. When I was a kid, back in the, late 90s, for 6 years, I was told that it was stress. Like IBS and Crohn and anxiety. And, oh, no, it's almost, they didn't, phrase it like that. It's in your head. But it's funny how after 6 years, they found stones on my gallbladder.
Oh.
So I had for 6 years to go back to appointments, test after test. If you've ever had a coloscopy, it's not fun, like you don't want to have too many of those. But I had probably 3 or 5 then.
Yeah.
And I had to stick to it because it's not in my head. There's something physical. Definitely. So that's what I mean by responsibility and trust your gut, And keep in mind, we have a tendency I had a tendency when I'm sick to say, I want to solve it. I'm in the action. I want to solve it. Check. Let's move on. One of the worst mistakes I've done, and if I had a magic wand, is I wouldn't go to the hospital on November 7th. If I could do it again, I would never go.
Yeah.
I started freaking out because I saw urticaria. I had a panic attack. Let's go. But the guy at the ER is trying to solve the issue then.
That's it.
And what he tried to solve was my migraine.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
I think immediately when we're in pain or we have a problem, we want it solved immediately because we're not used to being in that situation. And we give so much trust into the medical system that the person that is in front of us, we give them all of our body and our mind, and we say, okay, fix me. But really, we're not in a good mind frame to think, is he the right person to help me to the depth of what I need? And he's not in your body either, therefore he can't really, you can tell him what you've got, but if you've forgotten 1 or 2 little details about how you're feeling, he may have the wrong diagnosis. So by, like you said, you need to trust yourself and you need to take more time and make sure that I think taking the time obviously when you're in an emergency or a crisis, it's a little bit hard, but taking a step back I think is important, and not giving so much importance to the medical system. That there's wider and brighter and more help around the medical system, and there are specialists who can help in special cases. So GP doesn't do the same thing as a surgeon, and a surgeon doesn't do the same thing as a gynecologist, and so on and so forth. So
yeah, and if you keep in mind that, like a doctor is like anybody who's learning something.
Yeah,
You go to school, you learn something, and then you gain experience by practicing. The thing is, the doctor is not practicing on a sheet of paper.
No.
He's practicing on human beings.
Yes.
Like, that's why I'm saying they're human. They're doing the best they can with the information they had. And keep in mind that when I went to the ER in early November, I didn't have my diagnosis. Mm-hmm. So I was saying, I have those pills and I'm taking those pills, but that didn't ring any bell for him.
No, because you're you with your symptoms, but the person next to you with the same symptoms may not have the same thing as you. So a human is dealing with a human, so imperfection is bound to be created here.
And even more so when you tell him, like, I might be allergic to viruses, and it doesn't exist.
It's not something they've probably ever seen, right? So.
No, and to them, they're like, it's impossible. And you're like, well, so, that's why I'm saying I can't blame them, but they're humans. They have their field of specialty, and they have their limits. So you have to trust yourself.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Geneviève. We're going to take a little break, and we're going to come back and talk about the other side, which we already started going on to, like the positive side of having an event like that happen to you. And what can we do with all of this? So we'll be right back. Thank you, Geneviève. And we are back. Thank you, Geneviève, for all this information. I'm loving our conversations. It's flowing and it's just real. And I know it's going to help a lot of other women out there who are going through the medical system and are thinking, I am lost. I feel alone. I don't know where I'm going. And that's why we're here, to really help people, guide them. And if they have more questions, they can always go to the www.beguidedbeinspired.com platform, which is there basically made by women for women to help them feel seen and understood in the process of whatever they're going through in the life. So we're back with Geneviève and going on to the positive side of things, because like I mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast, there's a medal, right? I'm going to give two analogies. The first one is the medal. There's always two sides to a medal. There's a dark and there's always a positive side. And the second analogy is, I've really liked this one. It's the butterfly. The caterpillar goes into its cocoon and works hard, really hard to get out of the cocoon, and turns into a butterfly. Mm-hmm. And the butterfly just flies away and does his other thing, and fulfills a different kind of purpose afterwards. So, Geneviève, yes, there's been negative. Mm-hmm. Yes, there's been tough times, mental toughness. There's been physical, mental, psychological effects to all of this. But what do you take out? What is the positive when you kind of step back from, there's a big tree in front of you. It's hard to see the forest. But when you take a step back and you look at that forest, what do you see? Well, what's positive about everything that you've lived?
When I think it was early 2000, my grandfather died. When he was, the last couple of days, he had started suffer from dementia. And what's important to note is the fact that my grandfather was a religious man, very stoic, very polite. Like he died, he must have been close to 80, so like a long life.
A good life, a very good
life. When I saw him last, he was in the hospital and he was swearing at the security guard, and he had to be secured on his bed because he was very agitated, and he was focusing on his diapers. And I had never seen my granddad like that ever in my life, and that made me realize that we only have one life to live, and we have to live it to the fullest. And then, like maybe a month afterwards, I got it tattooed on my back. I got something tattooed on my back to remember to live the life to the fullest, and according to my standards and according to my needs. Because I have this tendency, and this tendency went on until probably 2022, early 2022. For different reasons, I always wanted to exceed people's expectations of me. The good thing about it is that it made me very perform, like I'm pretty good at what I do. And, like people usually like to hire me or work with me because I deliver whatever I need to. However, that doesn't make me focus on my needs.
Okay. You put other people's needs ahead of yours.
Yeah. So basically, I've lived a very good life. I've traveled. I've dined out. I've done a lot of things, a lot of experiences that I'm very proud of, and that's probably why I was saying earlier that like when all of this happened, I was like, I'm ready to check out. Like 95% of my bucket list has been checked off.
Wow. That's amazing.
I'm not even 50.
Good for you. That honestly,
hats
off to you.
So, and this urge to check things off my bucket list came from seeing my granddad. Like, I'm going to live my life my way, So basically, to get to your question, when all of this happened, it just consolidated my idea of who I am and accepting who I am. I'm resilient. I'm someone who wants to help because I've been helped before. And, like as I said 1,000 times, I think I'm privileged. I've lived a good life. I want to give back. And, I've been trying to find a new challenge and how to grow and evolve since 2018. I've been looking for it. And when I decided to go on my own in 2024, that was aligned with that, like getting out of my comfort zone. But even when I went out of my comfort zone by becoming self-employed, I don't think I was assuming who I was authentic 100%. I don't think so. I think I still had things that I was not comfortable with. And this allowed me to say what I want to do is help people out, and that's my higher calling. And I mean, helping people out. I have a bachelor's of psychology, a master's in training, and I'm a certified coach. There's an underlying team here.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're heading in a similar direction every single time. So sometimes we may have all of those and still not have the finger on how we can do it. And I think that maybe that was maybe the
trigger.
The trigger. Yep. Thank you. Yep. The trigger that made you go like, oh, this is it. This is my spark. I'm gonna go towards.
Well, that's exactly it, in the sense that I've been earning a living with my skills, like training and helping training team and helping teams to perform better and optimize their performance, right? But I've been struggling with how can I do it for human beings and how can I give back? I've given money, I've given my time because I coach people like, pro bono, and I mentor people pro bono. But I was like, how can I incorporate it in my offer? Mm-hmm. And that's the positioning I was talking about earlier. Like, yes, I want to give back. And how can I give back? I can give back with anything related to resilience and, the ability to adapt to what's going on. And as I said, you've inspired me with your own project. So that's my spark. That's the positive in all of this. And if whatever I've gone through, because, as I said, there's two people that I didn't know from Adam or Eve that took their time to help me understanding better. So if my experience being this one, being struggling to find a positioning, being needing to outperform everybody, if it can help anybody, I'm willing to do it.
And it brings me to my two next questions, right? But because of all of that, were you able to surround yourself with brand new people that made you brand new friends, that maybe along the way, maybe you've met people that had similar situations as you, and did it give you more friends, new tools in your toolbox to kind of
it's hard to pinpoint one thing. Like, is it the medical situation? Is it the networking I was doing? Is it the fact that I'm self-employed? It's really hard to pinpoint it. What I can tell you though is that my life has changed in the last couple of months. I've because of the fact that I was probably less self-assured, my self-esteem wasn't at the same place. I had issues with self-confidence up until, probably 2024. Because of the fact that those are not as prevalent, it's easier to meet people. So probably because of this, and because I was freaking out and needed help, I met people through that. Like I wouldn't have done that podcast a year ago, ever.
Okay.
Like the
Why
fear
not?
of being judged, being judged. Like it's like a weakness. When like I struggle with my mental health. Like actually saying it live in front of people who I don't know, like the fear of being judged, the fear of being perceived as weak. Not perceived as top of my game. Like I'm self-employed. Will people hire me?
What? I have to say that from the moment I met you on those online business networking events, you struck me as like a positive, bubbly person. So I'm so happy to have you on here and that you were able to spread your wings and come out of that shell, because what I see is totally not what you're talking about. So all of this has really brought really probably a new light to you and a new wind.
Yep. Yeah. Like I kept on telling myself, because bad things seem to happen to me every 6 years. I have struggles depending. Yeah, it's that cycle. Like 2018 was my dad dying, and then 2024 was being sick, and I kept on repeating, trying to convince myself and repeating to myself, it's a storm. You're going to get out of the storm. It always happens, And I kept on saying, you're going to learn from it, and you're going to be, like a new person because of this. And if you can get through this, nothing's going to stop you. And whenever I say that to myself, I kept on, saying, yeah, we'll see. And when the phrase, what if there were light in the tunnel, came to me, it seems as though it changed everything. That gave me this win that you're talking about. And the fact that, oh my God, like it's the start of a positioning, and I'm not going to be afraid to say, like, yes, I went through this, but it just gave me more experience to be resilient and to talk about resilient. And, I'm going to be able to, like adapt more, and I have more, more ideas on how to adapt and to do workshops or, seminars or anything.
And hearing you talk earlier, you've brought your husband out of his shell. He's more positive. You've inspired him to lift you up, and people around you want to lift you up. And I mean, those are all amazing, positive things that in the end is making you want to continue that and pass it on to the next person.
Pay it forward. Yeah, for sure.
And even in the last 2 years, whenever you were in the darkest moments, there were, your husband found a way to say, let's look at the positive in life rather than just be negative. But, well, you know what? Passing this on to the next person. Find the positive. And there is always the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. If we're going in analogies, I kind of like that one.
But when you're stuck in the storm, you don't want to hear about the pot of gold. You don't want to see it. You don't think it exists, and like you don't really care about it. Anyway, in my case,
I'm totally with you.
and I even got, as I was mentioning earlier, I even got upset with the therapist. Like, stop telling me that it's temporary. It doesn't feel temporary. It's a chronic illness. It's an autoimmune thing. It's not temporary. But the thing is, you want to talk about images. I'm not an expert in neuroscience, but one thing that really stuck with me, sometimes you drive on a highway and there are some dips in the road, and your wheels end up like stuck in there. It's the same thing with the brain. The more you do something, the more the path gets cleared.
Yeah.
It's easier to walk on a path that's cleared out than to try to make the path clearer. You have more efforts in trying to, get the weeds out of the way and the long grass out of the way and the, those small trees, right? It takes more effort. It's the exact same thing when you're going through a storm.
Totally.
It's easier for your brain to notice the negative and focus on the negative than putting energy in trying to find a new way of doing things and seeing things in another way. And basically that's what to me means, what if there were light in the tunnel? Where if you're able to push it aside and please believe in yourself that you're able to to see things differently, and there is help around you. I'm the living proof. I had people I didn't know from Adam or Eve. I'm still,
Helped
you know.
What's worse, right? Not attempting to do something, or getting to the end of your life and regretting not doing something and thinking, whoa, am I going to have to redo my life all over again to maybe reach that goal? I don't know. Maybe some people don't believe in that, but I really believe that I would probably regret more not making an effort at the end of my life than to maybe look silly or get a little bit of judgment from people here and there that I don't know. So I don't, I'm going to try to brush it past, even though it might affect me a little bit, but I'm going to try to brush it past, because I feel that having regret at the end of my life will be worse than to push through right now.
I agree with you 1,050%. The only thing I would say to that, though, is to me, it's easier said than done, in the sense that I do believe it. When it happened with my grandfather, that's exactly what I had in mind. I don't want to get to the end of my life saying I should have done this or I should have done that. I don't want to do that. And that's why, as of today, I'm 95%, done with my bucket list. However, that is the same thing to me as if we have a conversation about, don't wait for something to be perfect before you try it.
Oh.
It sounds good. It is true.
It's so hard.
But,
I'm putting all of myself out there. How good can I look before I let it out? How perfect can it be? Nothing's going to be perfect, but yeah, I totally get you.
Yeah.
Doing this podcast is like, I'm sorry my language, but I'm shitting my pants. I don't know if I'm doing it right. But you just got to give it a go, right?
Yeah, but that's exactly it. It sounds good. And to me, it's been a huge motivator. But when you get to that and say, oh, I'm good. Like when I became self-employed, I didn't know anything about being self-employed. And I was not a fan of networking, and I was not a fan of business development, and I was not a fan of putting myself out there. And thank you, ChatGPT, because you can help me out. But that being said, it's as I said, I agree with you 1,000%. I don't want to regret anything, so I'll try it. But it's one thing to say it, and it's another thing to live it, and that's probably what frustrated me the most. From what, as I was saying, the psychologist, when she kept on saying it's temporary, I felt as though I was being gaslit. Don't tell me that hear me. I'm saying that it doesn't feel temporary.
No, but there's a good podcast or book. I really like Mel Robbins.
Yep.
And her counting down, is it from 10 or from 5? But the fact that mentally, when you count down from, let's say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1 is like, okay, I got to do it. And it snaps you into action. And I really do live by that, in the sense that mentally you have to, it's not easy. It's hard. It is hard. But sometimes when you don't have no one to kick you in the tush,
you have to do it yourself.
You have to do it yourself.
Yep.
And that could be a really good way to help you out. With that said, final question on the positive side. Or I don't know, you'll tell me what you think. But was there a person in your life that showed their real colors in a time of need, positively, that surprised you?
Well, I mean, I feel as though I'm only saying the same thing over and over again, but those two ladies, Cassandra and Julie, I had never met them before. I think I spoke to one of them 5 minutes in my life. And, they offered me their time, and not just like the hour and a half that happened there, but we keep on texting, right? So that to me is unbelievable. And again, there's people in my life that have, when you have someone who will have to wear a mask, who can't eat gluten, dairy, anything fermented, and or refined sugar, it's not easy having the person over, right? Because you're like, do you want to eat boiled chicken and broccoli? It almost sounds like that. And I've had close friends and family, put a lot of effort to try to adapt their food. So the people I have close to me are not the same that I had like a year ago. But those who are still there or who have become part of my close knit circle, I just can't be thankful for them.
Of course.
It's yeah.
It's a blessing, honestly. When it's in the harder moments, the real people around you will either show their true colors positively or negatively. So, and the ones that stick, they're the ones you want to keep around for the long haul. So, thank you very much. It's I think our time to take a little break. We're gonna take a quick short break and come back to the constructive. What's next? What's the next step? Well, you've already mentioned a little bit, but what's next for you, Geneviève, and how do you want to spread your wings like that butterfly and become the best version of yourself? So we'll be right back. Thank you. Welcome back to the podcast, A Woman Spark, with myself, Janik. We're back here with Geneviève Bourdeau, who has had her fair share of medical history in the last 2 years, but also probably even more than that. We've talked about her last, I think it started when you were really, really young. So 6 years old, I think you mentioned. We've talked about the positive. We've talked about the negative. But what is your spark, Geneviève? Where are you going next with all of this? Because obviously it has built you up, and we've talked about it a little bit before, but I think we're talking about a little project that you want to put together. What is that project? What is that spark?
Well, basically, this gave me the opportunity to differentiate, at the same time, differentiate and consolidate. So differentiate the offer that I have that's more related to my skills, which is related to skills development. So coaching and training people and advising people. And when I mean people, I talk about training teams in large organizations. However, what it also allowed me to do is consolidate this business aspect with my more helpful, I guess. Not helpful, but I mean pro bono, wanting to help human aspect of who I am. And I had problems consolidating it because, you don't necessarily earn money out of, doing pro bono work or helping people out. And I don't do it to earn money. I genuinely want to help people. And that was one of my biggest challenge, was how to help people while earning a living and feeling as though I was allowed to earn a living. Because I like to earn a living in whatever it brings me.
It's nice to eat, right?
Yeah, or have a roof over your head, or
that too.
Eat. But that being said, I also want to give back. So trying to find the balance, and I'm still working on the project. But the idea is, how to help people evolve and transform to become a better version of themselves. So, when we coach people, we start from their objective and help them out trying to reach those objectives. So we're talking about coaching, but there's a whole part that's going to be pro bono. I'm working with 2 other people, and I wanted, it's about resiliency. It's about, adaptation in an uncertain world. And, changes happen on a daily basis, and we don't have control over all of them. And, just thinking about what's going on with the States and the tariffs and those kind of thing, it's going to have an impact on a lot of people, and you can't control it, and you can't necessarily prepare for it, because nobody would have expected Trump again, unfortunately, but that's another story. That being said, so how can I give back and help people see the light while they're in the tunnel, and so that they don't have to wait? We were talking about it earlier. When can I see the light? When can you give me a deadline so that I can start living again? Well, sometimes, I'm lucky enough that I haven't gone into an accident, but some people get into accidents, they lose their head, their legs, their eyesight, their, whatever. So when poop happened, how can you deal with it while with your head up high and keep on walking? Because That's what I've managed to do in the last 3 months. I didn't miss a beat as far as work concerned. And it's not because I'm Superwoman. It's because I've had people around me, and if I can help people do that, I'll be happy.
But you found your calling, I think. And when we find our calling and we put our finger on it, I think it makes us want to rise up and because we're in the right shoes. When you're wearing the shoes that are too small or way too big, it feels like you can walk, but maybe a bit stumbling. But when the shoe fits perfectly and you feel like it's shiny in the perfect way that you would want it to be and feel like Cinderella, well, then, you just want to wear that shoe again every day and, give it more and more and more.
And I like what you just said. Yes, I think I found my calling. The thing is, I think I had an idea of my calling, but I didn't, up until then, I didn't find the shoe that really fit. I knew it was a sneaker. I knew it was in a high heel, but I didn't know which one would fit better. However, on top of that, and that's probably the spark, and while talking about it, I realized how truthful it is. I think I allowed myself to find the proper shoe. And I think that's my biggest victory. I allowed, up until 2022, I would wear a shoe that was given to me, or that, someone would say, oh, that shoe would be good for you. Let me wear it and show you how good they are. And now I got to a point that I don't need anybody to tell me which shoe would be better for me, that I can actually decide that I want to wear a pair of sneakers with a dress. And,
if you want the big, pink laces with the sparkles at the end of it, then, it's what fits you.
It won't happen, the sparkles in the face, but say if ever I wanted that shoe. But that's exactly it.
And we had a little bit of a conversation. Now, I don't know if I'm diving down the wrong diving board, but you did mention maybe social media and that you wanted to maybe interview other people, and do you want to elaborate on that? I think maybe to give some people some inspiration, but also this is your inspiration, this is your shoe, so it's not all defined yet, so I'm really in the let's test and learn and not wait till it's perfect. So thank you for the opportunity. I don't want to do a podcast because I don't think that would be the proper shoes for me. However, I want to push myself out of my comfort zone, and I really want people to be able, because what I found is that a lot of people won't ask, and a lot of people don't know where to start. So that's what I liked about your idea when you started talking about the podcast. I was like, a podcast is not a solution for me, but how can I get the message or the content to people without them feeling as though they have to work for it, and sometimes you don't know where to begin. No.
So there's going to be a part of social media, probably through Instagram. We're playing with the idea of the equivalent in French of almost invisible, in the sense that sometimes there is light in the tunnel. We don't always see it. It's almost invisible sometimes, but it's a matter of trying to find it. And sometimes the light is inside of you. So
feel free to say it in French, because as none of you know, we both speak French and English. So, just say it in French and then try to translate it in English, and then
literally it's presque invisible.
Presque invisible, almost invisible. So
almost invisible.
There you go.
So in the sense that sometimes it's almost invisible, we don't see that there's hope. We don't see that we have this strength inside of us. We don't see that. Tomorrow is probably going to be different. There's going to be a part about, having conversations with people who are basically going through hell or have just gone through hell. If you had to look for a light while you're in the tunnel, what would it look like? And if you find it, what would you do with it? And if you found it, what has helped? And what are the advice that you can pay forward? I'm doing 10 hours of pro bono work a month, either coaching or mentoring. Bono work, trying to fit in, and if I can, me or other people that I'm going to be working with, because we work on the project a lady who came to Canada 20 years ago, and she 2 years I think after she got here, she got divorced, and so she's helping a lot of people who are coming in. So we're all in our fields. We're helping people. So we're trying to put our strength together and our ideas together to be able to give back.
That's it. We can all give back in our own little way, in our own big way, because we come with our own background and our own personality and DNA. So whatever you provide is completely different to what your neighbor can provide, but it's just as valuable. Mm-hmm. So, and to conclude our show today, and I know you've mentioned it, but I just want to re-impress how important when you want to help others or find your next step in your process of life after living such a big experience, it's to find your why, because without your why, you can't put a foot in front of the other, right? Having the why is really, really the most important. So can you reiterate your why, and we'll conclude on that.
The thing is, I couldn't find my why. That's real life. I'm sorry. I'm playing with a pen. I couldn't find my why, and that's when I had a conversation with life. So that brings me for people who are stuck or don't see the light or who are going through some type of storm. Believe in life's small miracles. I had a conversation, and out of nowhere, this phrase, "What if there were light in the tunnel?" came up. I don't think I've ever used those words together in my life before, maybe a week before that. And out of nowhere it came. And I'm not overly spiritual or anything. It's just that it did happen. I'm not lying. That's how it happened. And I didn't know I knew that I wanted to help people. I've done the studies, I've worked in training for 20 years. But how to help people in a concrete way, and to try to manage to get that with how I earn a living, I hadn't done that before. So basically it's to be able to earn a living while helping people and helping them as individuals, even though they're professional, helping them evolve.
Maybe a why could also be because you went through something hard, and maybe you lacked a little bit of, you had help, and that was, thank God you had that help, but you maybe putting yourself in the shoes of someone who didn't have help, you wouldn't want that for other people.
Oh, no, for sure. And that's why I want to help people.
It's a big enough why. It's a big enough why. Because
you don't, when things happen and you're powerless and you don't know how to deal with it, there's no instruction manual when poop happened.
No, that's it.
So that's basically, if we're talking about a why, is basically to help people while they have to deal with poop in a figurative manner.
Thank you so much for all this amazing wealth of knowledge and wealth of experience that you've shared with us today. It's an honor to have had you here today.
My pleasure.
To all you beautiful women, I hope you've been able to be inspired by Genevieve's journey, and will help you grow into yours, into your whatever you're living. Tune in every week on your favorite podcast platform, and let's shine together. If you want to get involved with the Be Guided, Be Inspired community and share what kind of impact you've had on others because of your experiences, or you're currently going through a tough time, come meet us on the platform at www.beguidedbeinspired.com. Write us and we'll connect together. You're not, and I'll repeat it, you're not a bother, but you'll feel seen and heard. Maybe even find some solace for the day. So see you on the next podcast.